Yesterday, I was at my sister's house with my mom watching my son and nephews play in the yard. One of my nephews, Harrison, was picking bark off a tree when I remembered an odd encounter I had as a kid. I said, "So weird," out loud, thinking about the encounter. My mom inquired what I was talking about, so I told her. When I was a kid, I was hanging out at the pinecone forest, which is what the neighborhood kids called a small patch of trees on the side of the road. I was picking bark off of one of the trees to pass some time, waiting for my friend Frankie to finish his homework and come out and play. Out of nowhere, it seemed, a guy came up to me. I could smell him before I saw him. He smelled like stale cigarette smoke. I was kind of scared when I looked at him. He wasn't very old, but he had a very lazy eye that was cloudy, and his teeth and fingernails were stained yellow. My mom taught me to be nice to people, even if they don't look like me. So I faked a smile and said hello.
"What are you doing?"
he asked me. The smell of his breath was the worst. I'm picking the bark off this tree."
"You shouldn't do that. It's like picking off the tree's skin. How would you feel if someone picked off your skin?"
he said while lightly pinching my arm with his sharp yellow nails. I don't know," I replied and took my arm back. Just then, Frankie's mom called for me out of the door and told me to come and wait inside. I didn't think anything of the whole thing at the time. When I told my mom about it, she had this look of... I don't know, guilt, maybe? She said that it's probably time I know the whole story. She thought I forgot about the whole encounter, so she never brought it up to me. First, you should know that the neighborhood I grew up in was a small, tight-knit community. Everyone knew everyone, and there was no reason for an outsider to come unless they knew someone there. Here's what happened with this guy. Frankie's mom, Sonia, noticed a white van with no windows parked on the side of the road. How cliché, right? She didn't recognize it, but figured maybe it was a visitor for a neighbor. Sonia said, or rather told the police, that the van had been there all morning and afternoon. She was kind of keeping an eye on it. She said she just had a bad feeling. Her house had a huge window in front facing the pinecone forest, and the van was parked right next to it. She saw me waiting for Frankie and kept a constant eye on the van while holding the phone just in case. She saw the man exit the back of the van and walk up to me. As soon as she saw him grab my arm and pinch me, she called the cops. That was when she called me into her house. The cops stopped the guy just outside of my neighborhood. In the back of his van were binoculars, a Polaroid camera, and pictures of me, taped all over the walls and ceiling. Me at school, me at my grandparents' house, me at the bank with my mom, just me. Everywhere I went. But that's not all. He had a key to a storage unit on him. Inside the unit, they found a cabinet full of knives. A lot of knives. Paring knives, a butcher cleaver, a thin flay knife, a melon baller. Just various knives of all shapes and sizes. There was also a few anatomy books, obstetrical equipment, duct tape, and 10 empty 5-gallon buckets. In the middle of the unit was an old bed that was used to restrain mental patients, so it had wrist and ankle straps. And the entire inside of the unit was covered in plastic wrap. My mom said he was in a high-security mental institution for the criminally insane. Last she heard.
This happened a couple of months ago. It feels hollow to put a catchy title on what happened to me, because it freaked me the fuck out for a while, but I think it fits in this community. I was driving home from work at 2 a.m. I'm a nurse and I live in a small city. The roads were totally deserted and it was a freezing night. I don't live far from work, maybe a couple of miles. I'm driving down this residential street around the corner from my house, and I see a man lying face down in the street. Now remember, I'm a nurse. My first thought was, great, gotta help this guy up. I was coming off a long shift and falls happen all the time. As I slowed down the car, I suddenly realised what an idiot move that was. I'm a 100-pound woman and I don't carry any weapons, but I thought I should do something to help the guy out. So I called 911 as I drove past him and slowed to a stop at the end of the block. While I was stopped at the light, I explained to the dispatcher that there was a man in the middle of the road who might need assistance. All of a sudden I hear this loud bang bang on the driver's side window. I screamed and looked over. A man was pounding on my window and jiggling the handle of my locked car. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw that there was no man lying in the street. Still on the phone to 911, I screamed, "I'm so scared," to the dispatcher and floored it through the red light. I quickly told him what had happened, and even though I was right by my house, he told me to keep driving. After a few minutes I had calmed down and he told me to loop back around. I pulled over down the road from my house and stayed in the car. I didn't see the man anywhere, so I got off the phone with the dispatcher, who told me he was sending a police car to cruise the area. As I gathered up my things, I did one final scan of the area, and I saw the man. He was walking with two other men. I hunched way down in my car until they were far down the road, then bolted into my house. I don't know if he had ill intent, but it freaks me the hell out that he wasn't alone. Always lock your car doors and carry mace.
About a year ago, in my final semester in college, I worked at a department store in the mall. I didn't have a car yet, so I asked for day shifts because it was only a 2-hour bus ride back home. So basically, if I had a closing shift, I'd get done at 11, but not get home until 1 a.m. But sometimes I'd be given closing shifts, much to my annoyance, since I had a 6:45 a.m. class, and my mother was worried because who wants their kid on a public transport that late? Sometimes she'd come and get me, but it'd be too much of a hassle to get my younger sisters out that late and such, so I never asked her. My managers, being the jerks that they were, gave me a week of closing shifts, knowing my situation. I was pissed, but whatever. One night I had just finished my shift, got on the bus, and I sat in the back and was minding my business when my iPod died. I was annoyed, but I just kept my earbuds in and occupied myself by playing a crossword on my phone. About 2 seats behind me, I hear these guys speaking Spanish. Now, my stepmother is Puerto Rican, so while I understand a fair bit of Spanish, I don't speak it. So I hear them talking, but I don't pay attention because it's rude and to eavesdrop and all until they say, "That black girl up there." Then my ears pick up. I keep my earbuds in so that they can't think that I can hear them. I continue listening. What they're saying is horrific. To paraphrase, they knew my stop, second to the last one before the bus gets back to the terminal, and while at my stop is at the front of the neighborhood, it's got no streetlights, and at this time of night, empty. And to put it simply, they were planning on snatching that piece of ass up. I was about 20 minutes away from home, so I knew I had to act quickly. Since I knew they could see me, they were 2 seats behind me, but like across, if that makes sense. I pretended to play on my phone, oblivious while actually texting my mom. "Mom, can you please meet me at the bus stop? 5 minutes go by. No answer. We're getting closer to my stop, so I decided to call her cell. No answer. I call the house phone and she finally answers. It's about 12:30 a.m., so she was asleep. I try to talk to her as cheerily and calmly as I can. This was our convo. Hey, Mom, did you get my text? No, what's up? Oh, I sent you a picture of these jeans and I'm gonna order online when I get home. I really need your opinion, so I really need you to look since the sale ends at 1 a.m. She gets the hint and that I need her and to look at her cell, so I say goodbye and hope for the best. We get to my stop and I see my mom's car. I snatch my shit up and hightail it off the bus. I don't even look behind me to see if they're following me. I jump in the car and tell my mom to just go. I look in the rearview mirror and I see the guys staring at the car. The next morning, I called my job and told them I quit. No more public transport for me. Thanks to my stepmom for teaching me Spanish. Thanks to my mom for getting the hint. Weird Spanish-speaking guys? Let's not meet again.
Hello. This sad, terrible story took place in the year 2003 when I was 15-year-old girl, still living in my home country of Uruguay. My best friend at the time, same age as me, was my neighbour, who lived with her mother and grandmother 3 houses down from mine. We had been friends since we were babies. We grew up together, went to the same school, moved in the same social circle, went on vacation together, shared clothes, CDs, food. We were basically sisters. Our families were close. Her mum, early 30s at the time, was a single mum working as a secretary. They didn't have it bad. Between her salary and the grandmother's pension, they lived comfortably and without any major setbacks. Her mum started seeing a foreign guy who was in the country for business. He claimed to be from Spain, but he had a funny accent, as if he was originally from Italy or another non-Spanish speaking country. He was supposedly rich, despite staying in a rinky-dinky hotel. The hotel did have a pool though. He would often show pictures of himself in a very luxurious residence. He said it was his house in Ibiza. Pictures of him driving a red sports car, a picture of him in front of the Eiffel Tower. Oh God, how innocent we were. After a month and a half or so of dating, my friend's mom said they were leaving the country in perhaps the next 6 to 7 months. She was in love with him, and he had promised her a life of luxury in Europe, and everything was going to be perfect. The country they were moving to? Spain. Her and her daughter. The grandmother couldn't come, at least not yet. She was supposed to meet them in the future after they had settled in. But at the same time, wasn't he rich? So many red flags. Now, this is where I come in. Since I was such good friends with Maritza, the guy had told Maritza's mom to bring me along for vacation. That would be good for Maritza, make the transition easier, etc. I was, of course, thrilled. A month in Europe with my best friend who was moving away, and the idea of going to see her every summer and stay at her stepfather's mansion, it was a dream. My parents, of course, weren't so thrilled at first, but as they got to know him, they liked him, and eventually he won them over too. Eventually, I got a little weekend job as a waitress at my uncle's restaurant to help my parents with the plane ticket and other costs. We got my passport, we were ready to go. As the months went by, it became evident that I wasn't going to be able to go. The money I'd saved wasn't enough. It didn't even cover half the ticket, and my parents couldn't come up with the money for the rest of the trip. A week or so before they left, the guy came to my house and talked to my parents. He offered to pay for my plane ticket. My parents politely declined. I was fuming. I swore I would never talk to my parents again. I didn't come out of my room for days. Eventually I got over it, and when it was time to go to the airport to say goodbye to them, I did. We cried, we hugged, we promised each other we would meet up next summer. By then I would already have the money saved. They left. We never heard from them again. The days went by and nothing. I remember the grandmother, the pain on her face, the nights she went on without sleeping, home alone, without her daughter and granddaughter, who were supposed to call her as soon as they arrived in Spain. And yet they never did. Eventually they were reported as missing. Surprisingly enough, the guy had given out his real name and last name the whole time, so after the cops got involved, it turns out he had this huge record in Spain and Italy, and had been in jail for drugs, prostitution, kidnapping, extortion, and God knows what else. The police told their family that they were most likely sold into a human trafficking ring, that this was very common, and that sadly there were too many cases like it. There was nothing to do but wait. Last time anyone saw them, or at any register of them, was at the airport in Seville when they arrived. Nothing else. Breaks my heart, even to this day, and to think that if my parents had said yes, I wouldn't be here today. Sends chills down my spine. Sometimes I look Maritza up in Facebook in hopes that I'll find her. Maybe she regained back her life and her freedom, but nothing ever shows up. The grandmother died in 2013 too. Sadly, without ever seeing or hearing from her daughter and granddaughter again.
It was absolutely the most traumatizing experience I have ever had. Okay, so I was in this group on Facebook where people shared different kinds of stories, mostly funny stories. I usually posted comments there using my dummy account, and most of the other people there use dummy accounts as well. I had a fun conversation with this guy using the dummy account named Luffy. He claimed to be 21 years old. We exchanged messages on Facebook without actually adding each other. We both found out that we lived nearby each other, so we decided to meet up and have lunch in a mall near our school. I chose a place to meet where it was really crowded. Since I had a dress rehearsal for a play, he told me that he would wait for me in a burger stand near our school. The night before, we sent each other pictures. I was so excited to meet him since he looked really attractive, smart, and funny. By 4 p.m., I stood beside the burger stand. A heavily tinted red car stopped at the street in front of me. Then I received a text message from him asking me to go inside the red car. Since I've read a lot of stories here on LNM, I decided to go with my instinct and sent him a text message saying that I wouldn't get in the car unless he got out and showed himself. What happened next made me promise myself that I would never meet anyone from the internet, ever again. A man, most likely in his 30s, went out of the car and started to clutch me by my arm and kept tugging me. I screamed like I have never screamed before, making it noticeable since there were civilians there as well. The guy who watched over the burger stand came up to us and asked what was wrong, clearly concerned. "She's my daughter. She's in big trouble. She ran away from home," were this creep's defense. I denied it every time, and the burger guy told him that he would alert the guards from our school. That's when Luffy let go of my arm, went inside his car muttering to himself, and drove away. When the guards came, I told them everything, and I wasn't allowed to leave the school until my guardian came to pick me up. So, Luffy, whoever or wherever the fuck you are, let's not meet again.